But first, here on ITV1, a survival special.
El Niño has returned to this remote Costa Rican coast for the third time in a decade. Once again, the forest of Corcovado faces drought or violent storms. On dark nights like this, jaguars patrol the beach. An astonishing sight which may vanish if these extreme fluctuations of climate become a permanent feature. After a period with little rain, the storm was a welcome change, but it was to be the last rain here in Corcovado for a long time. Enormous sharks are congregating by the mouth of the Rio Serena as it flows from the forest into the Pacific. Maybe they're drawn by the scent of carrion washed down by the river. As the tide comes in, some sharks follow it, hoping to find an easy meal. Or perhaps they have another purpose. Beyond the mouth of the Rio Serena is a tidal lagoon, surrounded by the tall rainforest of Corcovado. Here the diversity of life is as rich as anywhere on Earth, much of it rare and endangered. These squirrel monkeys live in only one other place in Costa Rica. The graceful spider monkeys are much more numerous, but even they have lost most of their original habitat in the last 50 years, and like all of the animals here, are effectively isolated, surrounded by hostile farmland or the Pacific. The behavior of many of these familiar animals is hardly known to us. Toucans and macaws are both common in captivity, but they've rarely been studied in the wild because rainforests are such difficult places to work in. For most of the time, sites like this are hidden by leaves. Corcovado is one place that is helping to shed light on these mysteries. It's become an important center for the study of tropical ecology. With over 500 square kilometers of virgin rainforest, it could be independent from the outside world if it wasn't for the weather. Under the canopy is a world much less familiar than the treetops. The forest floor. The casual observer won't see many animals in this damp, dark world. Only the ever-present leaf-cutter ants. With patience, you might catch sight of a motionless fer-de-lance lining up a lizard. But you'll be very lucky if you see more than a slight movement behind this wall of green. With visibility at around 10 meters, a 300-kilo tapir can easily become invisible. And this makes it hard for their enemies to catch them. But behind the leafy curtain is an abundance of wildlife that rivals anything on the African plains. Although for 6 months of the year, the forest floor is infested with ticks, making life a misery for many of the animals as well as for humans. Perhaps this is one reason why Corcovado still harbours one of the New World's rarest and least known animals, the white-lipped peccary. No one even knows for sure how they make this bizarre clacking sound. They may look like pigs, but they're only cousins, and they've been hunted out over most of Costa Rica. Corcovado is one of the few places in all of Central America where they survive at all. With the help of radio tracking technology, for the first time we've been able to gain some insight into their unusual lives. They mostly live in large groups of at least 30 animals, and they seem to know every bit of their patch. They know the sound of fighting monkeys means there's food nearby. It's the male white-faced capuchin against the spider monkeys. He won't win. But this tree is heaving with fruit, and the spiders can't be bothered to evict him. Food is raining down. Like the peccaries, the spiders have been watching this tree for weeks, waiting for it to ripen. And it's no surprise that a feast like this is a magnet for other animals. Coatis. They're equally at home in the trees. Today, they have no need to leave the ground. Peccaries don't have the option of climbing, but they do have the monkeys to feed them and watch out for them. As long as the monkeys are only feeding or fighting, the peccaries have nothing to fear. Peccaries will eat just about anything, insects, nuts, and even worms, but ripe fruit is one of their favorites. Despite this apparent bounty, things are not quite right in the forest. As a result of El Niño, the last couple of years have seen unusual weather patterns, less rainfall, and the peccaries have changed their breeding cycle. Now they have newborn young at the start of the dry season. Usually born as twins, the babies don't rely on just their mothers for milk. They can suckle from any females in the group, especially their older sisters. The herd is held together by the leadership of the oldest animals, those with the white muzzles, and by scent. Each peccary has a special gland on its back which emits a pungent and unique odor. This is one of the ways they can keep in contact in the dense undergrowth, that and their low grunting. These are tough animals, perfectly adapted to rainforest life. Even the clouds of mosquitoes give them little trouble. Here they really only have one enemy, secretive and virtually invisible. But catching a peccary is not that simple. The jaguar can hide from its prey easily enough, but it can't hide from the monkeys as well. They have such a clear view of the forest floor. The peccaries know exactly what the monkey calls mean, and males join in the mobbing. Meanwhile, the females and young make a controlled exit. The big, aggressive males are always the last to leave. As the peccaries left, they filled the air with their powerful stench. This seems to act like a smoke screen, making it hard for the jaguar to pick up their trail. Yet it needs to. Nearly half of its diet consists of peccaries. Because they've been hunted by humans for thousands of years, these cats have proved to be one of the most difficult to study. But initial findings from Corcovado reveal that their lives are closely linked to the peccaries. A normal peccary day consists of moving, feeding and mud bathing, followed by resting. But 1 month into the dry season and the mud is already gone. There's been no rain at all since the storm. And this is a rainforest. It's a problem for the peccaries, as it's thought that they use the mud to counteract the ticks. It's time for a change of scenery. Now there's no longer mud or fruit in this part of the forest. The drought is hitting hard. But the peccaries know their trails well. The experienced leaders of the group always have another place in mind. The young follow their mothers and begin to learn the trails for themselves. Deep in the forest is a mud bath that hardly ever fails. Now, even this is too dry for a good wallow. The jaguar has trailed the peccaries and is waiting downwind for a careless animal to stray near him. But the wind changes direction, and 40 pairs of extremely suspicious nostrils smell a cat. Once again, the jaguar is left with an acrid smell in his nostrils. As the dry season becomes a drought, the fruit trees in the hills stop producing. Food is now a problem for all the animals. Being so small, the squirrel monkeys can't follow the spider monkeys to the best trees. They need to find another source of food. In these dry conditions, crickets and cicadas proliferate, and the squirrel monkeys take advantage. The trouble with eating insects is that you need to drink afterwards, if only to take away the taste. But there is no water left in the tree holes. The monkeys have to come to the ground to survive. This is the last stagnant pool left, and there are already vultures waiting. For the moment, the squirrel monkeys have no need to worry. But if this water dries up, they'll have a problem. And Corcovado is now experiencing the hardest drought this century. During a normal dry season in Corcovado, it rains at least once a week. This year, there's been no rain at all for 3 months. The scarlet macaws are forming flocks so they can find food more easily. But this isn't a feeding flock. These are all young birds seeking mates. Not that their breeding season is even close. They're looking for lifelong partners. And for macaws, that could mean 50 years. So they put a lot of effort into making the right choice. One shows off to the other and invites a playful attack. These outrageous birds could once range over an unbroken canopy that stretched from Colombia to Mexico. Now the macaw's range is even more restricted than that of the peccaries. Corcovado is their main stronghold in this part of the world. By May, there still hasn't been any rain. Many of the trees have lost their leaves, and some are now dying. The only place with any real greenery left is along the banks of the Rio Serena. Much of the forest life is now concentrated here. A female crocodile has brought her newly hatched young, as there are no longer secluded streams and pools in the forest. But this is not a good place to be. Far inland from the tidal lagoon, in pure fresh water, are sharks. Not big ones, just a metre or so, but almost certainly the offspring of the monsters that hang around the river mouth. Perhaps they gave birth to their live young in the river, or maybe the babies swam here themselves. We don't know. What little we do know is that they're bull sharks, one of the few species known to tolerate fresh water. And bull sharks will eat just about anything. All is not well with the river either. The increased sunlight and lack of flow are encouraging the growth of weeds. The sharks will soon have to move out as the river becomes choked. Many of these fish are refugees from the dried or overheated rivers in the forest. For most of them, it's a waiting game. The food has already gone. And the lack of flow means that the salt water flows further into the forest every day. Twice a month, the spring tides advance far enough up the river to reach some of the dried up stream beds. As the tide recedes, it leaves pools of brackish water, very helpful to the peccaries in the drought. Their quest for food and mud has brought them out of the hills into the Corcovado Basin to the edge of the Rio Serena. Normally, this is a swamp even in the dry season. And they're not alone. Over 100 peccaries are converging on this place. As the group grows, it becomes noisier, but more relaxed. Old acquaintances are renewed. In this drought, the peccaries appear well fed and fit. There's plenty of milk for the growing youngsters, and yet the trees around them are dying. There's no aggression. Each group contains related animals. They're all part of the same supergroup that splits and reforms throughout the year and uses the same tracts of forest. At last, those ticks can be dealt with. They can cool off in increasing heat. So many peccaries need a large food supply. This is the other reason they've come here. Palm nuts. Around the Rio Serena is a forest of palm trees that's loaded with a rich source of oil and protein. Once again, the peccaries rely on the monkeys to drop food down and to warn them of danger. But these aren't any ordinary nuts. The monkeys can only eat the sweet exterior that covers the seeds, which are among the hardest in the world. Only white-lipped peccaries have jaws with the power to break these nuts. This is one of the secrets of the peccary's success. Even in the drought, they have a food supply not available to any other animal. They are the nutcrackers of the forest floor. At last, in mid-May, the wind changes direction and clouds form over the forest. Suddenly, the trees are drenched after 6 whole months of drought. But the rain was to be short-lived. For the moment, there's enough water to allow the forest to recover a little and regrow its canopy of green. Business as usual. Almost. A week after the rain, the river suddenly darkened. A bad sign. It turns out that the color is due to billions of microscopic organisms, and they have robbed the water of its oxygen. After such a long drought, the build-up of nutrients in the forest was enormous. One short shower washed them all into the slow-flowing river, allowing this algal bloom to flourish. The dark water fills the lagoon and stains the sea. Meanwhile, back in the same stream bed where the peccaries had their dry season mud bath, there's now another, more urgent aggregation. Almost the entire surviving population of fish from the Rio Serena is crammed in here. The only source of oxygen is a tiny trickle of fresh water. The fish are left with a stark choice. They can stay and face the lethal advancing tide, or they can risk a journey into the unknown, into this tiny stream. There is escape into this uncontaminated forest pool, safe from even the highest tide. Once one fish has made it, others follow. Before long, there's a constant flow of fish risking their lives to find safety. They can breathe again. But without food, they won't survive for long. Only rain can save them now. In all, at least 5,000 refugees made the journey. These are the fish that will spawn the next generation, if there is one. For the larger fish, this is the end of the road. As their oxygen needs are greater, they soon succumb. When the tide recedes, it leaves a sad legacy. Perhaps as many as 2/3 of the fish in the whole river system have died here. And in these temperatures, they soon decompose. Turkey vultures, with their acute sense of smell, have no trouble finding this spot. But vulture pecking order puts the black vultures at the top. The turkeys give way, politely. Both birds defer to the spectacular king vulture. Back in the nearby lagoon, there are other arrivals on the scene. Most of the larger crocodiles of the Rio Serena are already bloated with fish. They won't need to feed again for a few months, but it'll take much longer than that to restore the numbers of fish in the river. The males are very territorial and prefer only the company of females. The smaller males get sent packing. They'll have to find another place to digest their meal. Two days later, the lagoon, if not the entire river, appears dead. Only heavy rain can cleanse these polluted waters. Corcovado is in desperate need of rain. With the sharks gone and the crocodiles sated, the tapirs have nothing to fear. In practice, at 300 thick-skinned kilos and armed with vicious canines, very little bothers the adults. These are the largest land animals in South and Central America. Because of the drought, the food supply in the forest is still low, and many tapirs have been drawn to the edge of the lagoon. There are many more tapirs in Corcovado than were thought, perhaps as many as 4 per square kilometre. But this is no random collection of solitary animals. This is a male. He's the territory holder on this patch, and he shares it with a number of females and their young. He's young. Tapirs take everything at a slow and steady pace. The male crosses the lagoon at one of his regular points on his way to a fruiting tree that he knows. The female and calf follow him. The calf is still nervous about the water and clings closely to his mother. The scars on this male could well have been caused by sharks or crocodiles, but most probably another male tapir was the aggressor. He marks his territory in the usual way. We don't yet know what limits the numbers of tapirs here, whether it's male aggression or simply food supply. The surprising thing about the macaws is that the limit on their numbers is the availability of nest holes. Good sites are vigorously defended. There's been no real rain. As night falls, the moon, if it's full, is visible over the horizon shortly after sunset. To our eyes, this scene would be dark, but for an image-intensified camera, it's a brightly lit night. But when the moon is a crescent, it sets soon after the sun, and the rest of the night is lit only by stars. Now it's too dark for any camera to film the forest floor. On the beach, it's a different story. The tracks the jaguars leave behind tell us about their activities. This is the first time we've actually been able to see them at night. Turtles, too, leave tracks in the sand, but not all of these tracks return to the water, because jaguars visit the beach regularly. The olive ridley turtle is the smallest of the marine turtles, and it's also the fastest nester. It can be back in the water again, having laid its eggs after just 20 minutes. With 30 kilometers of coast to patrol, the jaguars often miss their target. Some nights, there may be as many as 4 jaguars on the lookout, especially if food in the forest is hard to find. Sometimes they know each other, sometimes they don't. As light levels fall, it becomes harder for the animals to see, and they become more wary. Even special cameras can no longer function well. But with infrared light, We can still see, though the animals can't. The jaguar has no trouble getting around, using smell and touch alone. It's caught the scent of a turtle carcass left unfinished by another jaguar. The approaching dawn brings a change in the weather. The wind is coming from the sea now. Many animals seem able to anticipate the weather, and the peccary groups are on the move again, back to the hills. The elders lead the group to the river, crossing at a place they were taught to use by their parents and their parents before them. They cross here because it's shallow and because it has good visibility. There are many young to protect. As ever, the jaguar is on their trail, and they know it. Even as the rain approaches, a pair of toucans are claiming a territory. Their singing attracts other unmated birds to join in, making one of the most spectacular sounds of this forest. The mature male feeds his female to induce her to mate, while the younger unpaired birds indulge in play fighting. The wet season has arrived. The rain has already washed the river clean of stagnant water, while the lagoon has taken on a lighter, healthier colour. The stream where the peccaries mud-bathed and where the fish escaped death is now a torrent. The fish are long gone, having already begun to repopulate the river system. In the hills, water is flowing again. And there are peccaries on their own, all of them males. These are the satellite males, and this is the most difficult stage in their lives. They want to infiltrate the main group and mate with the females. But of course, the resident males aren't too happy about this. The satellite males shadow the group, waiting for a good moment to get close. The residents threaten and display to them, showing their superior strength and chasing the younger males away. The intruder hopes to gain entry into the group with persistence and a fight, if he gets the chance. A resident male charges, and the intruder makes a run for it. This time the jaguar wins. Enough food for at least a few days before it has to find the peccaries again. Now unhindered, the resident males begin the serious task of passing on their genes. If the study of any of these animals in Corcovado has shown one thing, it's that no creature lives in isolation. Corcovado is more than just a collection of the rare and endangered. It's a complex and fragile ecosystem at the mercy of the world's weather.
If you'd like more information about anything you've seen on today's programme, you can visit our website at itv.com/survival or text page 651. And next tonight, it's Coronation Street.